Hey, Craig.
Do you have an intro? Do you have an intro this week?
I was trying, but you interrupted me. I'm Grumpy Dungeon Master Christopher. Make one topic. Joined today with Grumpy Dungeon Master Jay, and you called him Grumpy Dungeon Master, so yeah, I guess Grumpy Dungeon Master Christian and Dan.
Might as well.
Although I don't know how grumpy they are. Dejected. Maybe one of them's dejected.
I mean, you're really the only grumpy person here usually, so.
That's true. That's true.
Depends on how much coffee I've had. I'm usually not dejected.
Yeah.
So
well, I do have one topic at least, and
that's better than last week.
Oh yeah. And I did get a chance to run some D&D, so I actually have games and fun things to think about. And I'm also playing TCG Tabletop Simulator, which
oh, you're welcome.
Screw you for getting me into that game.
Yeah, that's my fault. I admit it.
And playing through Baldur's Gate 3 again, and I'm also I ran another 50th anniversary thing today. Today being Sunday, and it went pretty well. So I'll talk about that first.
All right.
They did release the 50th anniversary module, Uni the Hunt for the Lost Horn, on D&D Beyond. So you can actually get the module for free on there. And you also get all the magic items that the original D&D crew from the Saturday morning cartoon has. That they added those items as well too, the D&D Beyond. So if you really want to, get Presto's magic hat and Bobby's magic club, those are now items that exist in D&D Beyond.
I would not like to have Presto's magic hat because I would be super disappointed in how that thing works.
Actually, it's my favorite item of the bunch.
That's I haven't seen it, obviously. I just remember what they did with the Kinder when they tried to do Dragonlance. I say tried to do because they failed horribly at it. And how they just gave them like a tiny little limited amount of random items that they could have in their bag.
No. So with Presto, well, first off, how the module is written is that all the characters are adults now. And in their time of adventuring in Dungeons and Dragons, going back to the real world, and now coming back to the realm of Dungeons and Dragons, they are 50 years later, 40 years later-ish. They are in their 20s, and they're level 4. So,
wow, okay, they're almost ready to fight Tiamat again.
Yeah, maybe. So Presto's magic hat, I actually really like it. Let me pull it up here. It's called Hat of Many Spells. Wondrous item, very rare, requires attunement by a wizard. It has this pointed hat has the following properties. Spellcasting focus. While holding this hat, you can use it as a spellcasting focus for your wizard spells. Any spell you cast using the hat gains a special somatic component. You must reach into the hat and pull the spell out. So instead of doing your normal wavy things around, you can just pull the spell right out of the hat.
Okay.
Unknown spell. This is the cool trait. While holding the hat, you can try to cast a level 1+ spell you don't know. The spell must be on the wizard spell list. It must be a level that you can cast, and it can't have material components costing more than 1,000 gold pieces. Once you decide on the spell, you must expand a spell slot of that spell's level. Then, to determine whether you cast a spell, make an Arcana check of a DC plus the spell's level. On a successful check, you cast a spell using its normal casting time, and you can't use this property again until you finish a short or long rest. On a failed check, you fail to cast a spell and a random effect occurs, instead determined by rolling on the following table. And then there's a D100 table. So the first 50 results is you cast a random spell on a D10, being reduce enlarge, the enlarge effect, reduce enlarge, the reduce effect, fairy fire, fireball, gust of wind, invisibility, lightning bolt, phantasmal force, polymorph, or stinking cloud. All right.
Okay.
And then every 5 from 51 all the way up to 100 is you have the stun condition until the end of your next turn, believing something awesome just happened. A harmless swarm of butterflies fills a 10-foot cube within 30 feet of yourself. The swarm disperses after 1 minute. You pull a non-magical object out of the hat. A vial of acid, a flask of alchemist fire, a crowbar, or a lit torch. You suffer a bout of magic sickness and have poisoning condition for 1 hour. You are petrified until the end of your next turn. You pull a non-magical object out of the hat, being a dagger, a rope, a grappling hook, a caltrop, or a gem worth 50 gold. A creature in an unoccupied space gets summoned as close to you as possible. The creature isn't under your control and acts as it normally would. It disappears after 1 hour or when dropped to 0 hit points. And that animal can be a camel, a constrictor snake, an elephant, or a mule. A hostile swarm of bats flies out of the hat and occupies your space and attacks you. A vertical 10-foot diameter two-way portal to another plane of existence opens up in an unoccupied space within 30 feet of you and remains open until the end of your next turn.
That's called gate.
You pull a magic item out of the hat. The DM chooses what the item is. On a 1 to 3, it's common. On a 4 and 5, it's uncommon. On a 6, it's rare. It disappears after an hour. So honestly, I love the hat. And in both the games that I played with this person, or this group playing this module who played Presto, they were able to pull out a spell a couple times successfully. In this game that I ran today, he finally failed. And so he rolled on the table. He got like a 40-something, and then he had to roll a stinking cloud. And a stinking cloud like ended the encounter because it filled up this whole like area that they were in, and they couldn't do anything because they were all poisoned.
Right.
And I really like that magic item. All the rest of them are pretty good too, but
so that hat it's way better than I personally expected.
Yeah.
I'll say that. I still have one major gripe, and that's the fact that you can only do it once per short rest or long rest. If you watch the cartoon, like Presto he just kept doing it. Every spell. He didn't cast spells, he just pulled shit out of the hat.
The other item of note was for the character called Nico, who is an added character to the group. They added her in Dragons of Stormwreck Isle.
Boo.
They added an Asian character and a cleric at the same time because they didn't have a cleric back then or whatever.
It's 5th edition. You don't need a cleric.
Her magic item is where was it? Nico's mace. All right. The mace has 6 charges. It's very rare. It requires a 2-minute by spell, any spellcaster. It says has 6 charges. It regains 1d6 expended charges daily at dawn. While holding the mace, you can expend one of its charges to cast Summon Celestial.
Oh my fucking god.
Right? It's like they gave up with trying to make a really cool, unique item for this character because she wasn't part of the original cartoon, so they didn't have anything to base it on. So they gave her a mace that summons a freaking CR9 monster.
Yeah, okay, Presto, here you go. You get a hat that does random shit. Bobby, you get a club. This one guy, you get a shield. You don't get a magic sword to go with it, just a shield. You, on the other hand, you can turn invisible. You get a staff and can do gymnastics. Oh, let's give this one a mace that summons a fucking ninth, CR9 creature 6 times.
The mace is pretty good. It opens up like crevices and does like an AoE knockdown. It's got 2 abilities, Earthquake and Clap of Thunder. Eric's shield does exactly what you think it does. It just gives you a protective field, but you can't attack with it too. Diana with her staff.
Notice I didn't mention the bow, because the bow's actually fucking awesome.
The bow is actually really good. It has the thrown property. She can attack with it and twirl around and get a +5 bonus to her AC. And she has advantage on acrobatics checks. It does dim light. They're not really the best. The bow was pretty good. He got 3 different types of arrows that he could fire. The arrow of restraint, the arrow of transport, and an energy ladder. So the energy ladder makes a bunch of ladders appear. The arrow of transport basically teleports somebody 60 feet. Or you can teleport someone to you 60 feet away, which is kind of weird too. It's like, oh, well, hold still. And you shoot them with an arrow. They just appear next to you.
Yep.
And
I
the
got
arrow
you.
restraint just restrains a target that they can see with a DC 20 athletics that's needed to break it. So
Good lord.
yeah, it's pretty rough. But I like I said, I really like Presto's hat. I think it's probably the best item out of the bunch. It's random. You can pull any spell you want that you need, or you get a fireball in the head, and I always like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the best item by far is definitely the mace. But the bow's not bad. I mean, a 20 DC or restrained, that's rough, man. There's a lot of things that can't make that easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sheila's cloak invisibility is just, you get to be invisible. Ugh.
So I had one other question since you've read this thing and looked through it. What was the title again of it?
Uni the Hunt for the Lost Horn.
Okay, so they're looking for Uni's horn.
Yes.
Usually, when a unicorn loses its horn, it's because it died.
So the campaign starts with one of the sprites, the fairies that I think we're in the cartoon for a little bit, comes back to the real world and pulls the characters back to the realm of Dungeons and Dragons because Uni's been captured. And she was captured by Kellic, who basically stole her horn from her. And all he basically did is basically thwop her on the head with a magic staff, and it popped out.
Fake unicorn. Yeah, fake unicorn.
Fake unicorn. And then to put it back in, all you gotta do is just bop her in their head with the unicorn horn, and it goes right back in. So,
well, okay then. They didn't really think that one through, I don't believe.
Honestly, I will
mean,
say
you've seen the cartoon, right? They didn't really think any of that shit through either.
That is valid fucking point.
I will say this from a module that was written for new players to learn how to play the game. In this case, learn how to play the new 5e rules. I like this adventure better than anything else they put out there. From a one-shot perspective. So like if you factor in like the beginning of the Fandelver with the Goblin Cave and the Cragmaw hideout, you look at the start of the Dragon Wreck and Stormwreck Isles, where you have the ship and you get lost at sea and fight some zombies and you meet some kobolds and shit like that. I like this adventure better. It's more adventurous. You still get to have some fun. It's a quick in and out kind of thing. Like, oh shit, you got to help save your best friend. Okay, great. There's no the stakes are already there. You don't have to make anyone believe that they're going there for anything kind of big. You already know what the characters are. So it's very easy to teach someone how to play with these characters, especially if they've know who the cartoon characters are. And even a passing, way, it just allows people to connect better. And it's just a lot more fun to run this adventure through. You fight mostly bullywugs, and you fight some wargs and a mage. And
I like that they're using bullywugs. That's not an enemy you see all the time.
Right. So it's a little different. It's more fantastical than just a goblin,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it works better. There's a little blink dog that can help you out that you can make friends with.
Didn't a bullywugs almost total party wipe us in the beginning of Ghost of Saltmarsh?
It did.
Yeah, there's like a bullywug croaker.
There's a
something
croaker
like
or something like that. They have like an AOE, and I rolled for the number of them because it was a random thing, and I rolled the maximum number.
Oh,
yeah, it was.
And they all croaked. They just did their kind of big thing.
Bullywug croaker. It was AOE Glarpat. The Song of Marshy Doom. Each creature within 30 feet of the croaker must make a DC 12 Wisdom saving throw, taking 9 damage on a failed save or half as much on a successful. Creature that fails the saving throw also has disadvantage on Constitution saving throws until the end of the next turn. So yeah, it. I think it wasn't just one. I think it was like one or two. It was like either you maxed out on one of them and then you did a second one, and like we were like a level 3 party or something like that.
Yeah, no, there were 2 croakers.
Oh my god, yeah, it was almost
And
a total party
even
wipe.
yeah, and even your like barbarian failed, like Rob the barbarian, like everyone failed
Yeah,
like the first
and
save.
psychic damage just didn't care
Yeah.
about barbarian rage.
Wow, yeah,
Yeah.
no, these getting a couple of these at level 3.
Oh my god, yeah, it was brutal. It was
Uh,
brutal. And, like, we're fighting a bunch of other like regular croakers or
There's a couple
yeah.
of regular
Bullywugs,
Bullywug
too.
chuds that were
Yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of there to be
But it's that
mutuals.
Galar pot. They do that.
Yeah.
They can do it 3 times a day. 2d8 psychic if you fail. So you just assume half of your party's going to fail that. So 2 of them 3 times a day. Like
I
that's
think all of us failed that were within the 30 feet. I think we had
yeah.
the warlock was
Everyone
outside of that range.
everyone but Craig failed.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He survived.
Um,
I think he's the reason you guys survived because he
but
has a lot of his like revenge stuff is stuff that happens when something happens to him or his allies. He can revenge strike and
Yeah.
the other thing they can do the Ruglog.
I love that one.
Once per day, where every bullywug within 30 feet gain 10 temporary hit points. So
Oh
if
yeah,
they, if
that
they
made
space,
it hard.
They space that out, they're effectively healing 20 hit points on most of their guys.
Yeah, it was Twilight clerics in the form of a frog before there were Twilight clerics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this, a freaking bullywug bard?
pretty much.
Yeah, that's kind of nasty. One of them,
They're great.
one of them you can manage. 2 of them, yeah, that would suck. Huh? I had not seen those before.
I mean,
Oh, yeah,
they
they're
only
mean.
appear in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. So
Yeah, they're
surprised me.
fantastic. I love them.
Yeah, I've played the beginning adventure for Saltmarsh. One of our DMs used it as an opening for his own campaign, so he just used it sort of to get us to level 2 basically. But I don't remember Bullywugs being involved.
It was not a well-written campaign.
It was not. I homebrewed most of it. I did run one adventure like just as written. And
Ooh,
everyone
that was bad. It was really bad.
Everyone's like, "What the hell is going on, Christian?" They thought that I'd either prepared nothing or was just like winging it as I was going. It was so bad. And then I was like, "No, this is literally. This is the one that I was going to run." And I didn't tell them ahead of that because I wanted to see the real reaction. It was not good.
Yeah, it's like, Christian, did you have your child write this for you?
I'm pretty sure they would have done a better job. It was bad. It was really bad.
Yeah, that book, it does. The book itself is not useless though, because it actually has a couple of backgrounds in there, including I think there's a sailor variant, and it also has the upgrades for ships. So we were running we were playing in a pirate campaign a while back, and like you could take magical upgrades for ships. So it was something that we started doing later on in the game.
It also is the first time they gave any kind of reference to selling magic items.
Is it?
Yep.
Huh. Yeah, I never read through the whole thing. I only ever read through let's see what upgrades.
It was a pretty weak book.
Sounds like it.
It was mostly because I had a bunch of like seafaring miniatures and ships and shit, and I really wanted to use them, and they happened to come out at the same time. And it's like I had just ended my campaign. Christian's like, "I'll run something," and it was like it was between that or what's the module in Chult where you ride dinosaurs?
Oh yeah, I almost ran the
Tomb of Annihilation.
Tomb of Annihilation.
It was between that or Tomb of Annihilation, and everyone voted. It was like, yeah, let's be pirates. That seems fine. And
you have chosen poorly.
Yeah, apparently riding chocobos or dinosaurs was probably the better way.
You know what? Neither one of those modules are particularly good. But Tomb of Annihilation is probably better than Saltmarsh, which is, I think, of the published adventures, one of my least favorites.
Really?
That I've gone through.
Oh, a lot of people like Tomb of Annihilation, though.
No, I was saying Ghost of Saltmarsh is one of my least favorites.
Oh yeah.
I don't.
And what's weird about that one is that it's just an upgrade to an already existing module. So I don't know how you can kind of like.
That's the thing. It's not though. It's a series of unrelated modules that they don't really have a through thread through.
They just sort of tried to make it,
and they just try to ham fist them together. Like it kind of works with Candlekeep Mysteries because they don't have to tie together, and it's fine for you to have a bunch of different authors for all of the modules, and same thing for what's the heist one that they came out with?
Dragon
Keys from the
Heist.
Golden
Keys
Vault.
from the Golden Vault.
Keys from the Golden Vault. Those are fine because they're basically just a compilation of short adventures that are somewhat related to each other, but they don't really have to have a through thread tying them all together.
Yeah, Ghost of the Star Wars
Wars
includes such intros as first of all, they're not really connected, even though they're all supposed to center around this one region of Greyhawk, where they give you some information about it, and they say there. But the adventures don't really have a whole lot to tie them there, nor a whole lot of reason for why the PCs are staying there and getting involved in this. It literally just starts out with one of them as like, you accept a job, just like the PC, no negotiation, no role playing. The PCs just decided to do this because the DM said so.
Yeah, it was. You did the best you could, but it was not my favorite series of adventures. We had a lot of fun with it though, because of who we were playing with and what we were playing. But yeah, it was, and also just like they wrote and they compiled an entire series of seafaring adventures, basically the only ones ever represented in the previous editions of Dungeons and Dragons. But they didn't give you any special rules for seafaring adventures. I mean, none of note, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing new other than like what is in just the DMG. And it's just like, you guys couldn't give us a little bit more. No ship to ship combat. No, like,
there is some
using
ship to ship stuff there,
and
but it was so clunky.
Yeah.
They really failed with the vehicle combat, because even was it Baldur's Gate, the Set into Avernus, which is basically Mad Max style combat.
Yeah.
They didn't have any like vehicle combats. They had vehicle stats, but there was no real combat stuff going on. You kind of had to make it up as you were going along, which is really kind of odd.
It gave you some different stats for ships and some different upgrades, but as far as the actual combat, it was like a couple of pages of very vague rules that were kind of like playing freaking Battleship.
Yeah. Everybody expected Spelljammer to give some rules for how to do combat, and it apparently failed horribly as well.
Yeah, it also was not great.
I know that one of the things I kickstarted was the Sky Raiders of Abarax, which a lot of it is about flying airships. So I expect it to have rules for that. I have the PDFs, and I know I haven't gone deep diving through them, but I know that there's a large chunk in one of those books devoted to that. But the fact is, I shouldn't have to Kickstarter some secondary published book to get rules for something like that
to run something that you would expect in the module that you purchased. Yeah,
right.
In the module you purchased, or the Spelljammer book, or there've been so many opportunities to. I
will say in Spelljammer they at least have excellent diagrams of each of the different ships that were represented from second edition. They do have stats for like the hull, and they actually have stats for how many people it is to crew a certain weapon that is on the thing. But the weapons are silly. Like, you could spend 3 rounds loading this space ballista, or you can just fire a gun and do more damage because of Spelljammer, and you've got guns. It's just like, what? It's confusing at best. And again, the ship-to-ship combat is just lackluster and not terribly well thought out at all. It's like they didn't play test it at all. And I don't know. I never actually played Spelljammer in second edition, so I have no idea whether there were actually rules for it. But I've got to think that guys back then were so super into wargaming that they would have had rules for it.
I've looked through at least the Spelljammer core books from the box set years ago, and yeah, there's much more in-depth rules for ship-to-ship combat. Much more so than 5e, at least. I don't know how in-depth, but you're absolutely right. Players during second edition, we wanted fucking rules for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I don't know what we were even talking about that got us off on this tangent, but yeah.
I basically was trying to talk about beginner modules and the things we use as an introduction to stuff. And I had mentioned that the Fandelver one is basically you travel on a mission for a merchant, and you fight goblins in a cave. And the first encounter you get is a surprise encounter on some goblins.
With wolves.
No, the wolves come second.
Oh, okay.
So after you go through a fight, you're weakened. You don't really feel like a short rest at that point in time. You're a new player too. You wouldn't think of doing a short rest. It's just a couple of goblins. You're lightly wounded at best. And then you fight some wolves with pack tactics that utterly just fuck you up. And it's the weirdest second encounter I've ever experienced because they just come right out and murder you. And that one's okay. It's a little rough, like I said, but
yeah, fuck your good time. Welcome to Dungeons and Dragons. Make a new character.
Yeah, I've never actually run or played through or run Lost Mines of Phandelver. I have listened to like the first 10 episodes of Adventure Zone when they first started, which is what they were playing. That was first a couple of episodes, and yeah, it did seem a bit. It did seem a bit ridiculously overpowered, and like you're just going to murder off these brand new characters. In a couple of games.
What I like about Phandelver is that they at least let you kind of like go in, talk to the NPCs, get some quests, get some side quests, because that's still kind of like the MMO mindset that they were working from. Mm-hmm. So you have all these quests and side quests, and even the supplement box that they put out for Phandelver is the same way. More quests, more getting to know the townsfolk. Very MMO feeling. But overall, it really worked, and the dungeons are pretty well set up. Cragmaw Castle's pretty good. The actual Phandelver mine, when you get to it, is really well set up. The supplement adventures, fighting the white dragons and stuff like that, or as a full campaign, like as your first campaign, it's still really good. You compare that to the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, where your first fight is a Naga that just shows up on your ship, then some zombies, then you talk to a bunch of kobolds, which probably has thrown new players off because they're like, aren't kobolds bad guys? And you're in a temple of Bahamut, and then you got to go out and fight a bunch of other bad guys. And I think at third level, they send you up against a zombie beholder, which is like a lot. I mean, level 3s.
We fought one of those very, very recently in one of our games, and Muffin had to make a new character.
Yeah,
because he got disintegrated.
And then like the only other one I played was the one in 4th edition, which starts off very similarly, very close to how Phandelver starts off. You're on a mission for a merchant. You get attacked by goblins. You chase them to your cave, and you pretty much go through a cave that looks exactly the same as the Cragmaw cave, with a couple little differences, but it's the same thing. And then once you get back to the road, there's a Black Knight that's like watching you the entire time, and that sets up the Fall Crest storyline for you to start fighting Orcus. But that was handled
fighting Orcus in what?
Yeah. So
intro adventure, what?
So in the intro adventure, the way they handled the adventures in 4th edition is that you bought little pamphlets that had like some maps and the adventure booklet, and it had it set up in tiers. So you basically start off at like tier 1, and this booklet's modules for levels 1 through 3. This one's 4 through 6, then blah blah blah, all the way up to 30. And the last set of modules comes with the actual Orcus mini that you had to buy. And it was basically you follow this massively long story where you go to Fallcrest, you discover that there's an Orcus cult, you stop them from summoning Orcus, and then in a weird roundabout way, you make your way over across the points of light in the Nintir Vale to a Dwarven place, and you eventually descend down into the hells to fight Orcus. I mean, yay, I guess.
But yeah.
All right.
No, in the Nintir Vale, it was the hells. He had taken over that aspect of the world because the Nintir Vale was Crawford's pseudo Forgotten Realms that he made up. So things were a little different. Like it was more. It was more set up kind of like the heavens and the hells are fighting against each other instead of like having the abyss and stuff like that. But
well, all right then. You're the only one who knows anything about 4th edition, so
Yeah.
And it shows.
It was good. It was.
you had a fun time with it. That's really what counts.
Glad you had a
there
great
you go.
time, buddy. Glad you had a great time.
Yep.
I had a fantastic time. Everyone loved it.
Anyway, what's next?
Yeah. So let's talk about something else we can all hate on.
Yeah.
Where's my phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right.
So-
You got something else?
Oh,
You have
yeah,
another- wait, you have 2 topics? What the hell?
I know, right? So I was browsing Dungeon Master resources today,
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh gosh.
and I came across a post here, and I felt like it was something worthy of talking about.
Probably not, but we're going to do it anyway.
Here we go, delving into the depths of the internet.
So I'm gonna read the whole post to you. My dad asked last night the difference between a player and a game master. When I described both, he seemed intrigued by the role of the player. He'd never play. He's a video gamer. But to the dungeon master, he said that it seems like it's a lot of work for nothing. When I asked him what he meant, he said, "Well, DMs don't get to actually play the game. Sure, they control the monsters, the NPCs, and tell the story, but that means they know the story. There's no big payoff for them like the players. Do they get something out of it?" It made me quickly remember the old school DM rewards in 3.5 and 4E and how they went from cool things and trinkets you could be proud of to include in your D&D collection, and were practical outside of organized play to certificates you as a DM could redeem for your own AL characters at DM discretion. I have all my DM rewards, expired certificates for running AL from Horde of the Dragon Queen until Waterdeep Dragon Heist. And the one game I tried to redeem a reward for, the DM said, "No point, this is just a one-shot, save it." After that, I quit tracking them, found out none of the other players redeemed the reward certs either. So I responded to my dad, some DMs get sadistic joy out of watching their players suffer, but other than that, the reward is having fun with the friends every week or so, challenging your brain, getting its creative juices flowing. And he said, "Yep, seems like a lot of work for nothing." So I asked, what are some rewards, quote unquote, you can get out of DMing? So
Go ahead.
Friends we make along the way.
There's a couple things there. First off, like, he's talking about the AL DM rewards and stuff like that, which are absolutely meaningless. But that was a separate thing he kind of interjected into the story. But I think the core part of the question is like, what reward does a DM get out of playing? And I thought about it for a little bit because I thought that was a valid point. To his dad's questions, like, you already know the end of the story. What does that get? What does that get you? And if you're not running a straight campaign from the book, even if you are, you have to let the players kind of like dictate the story a little bit, like how to kind of let them go off script and be crazy, because that will lead to you having to come up with answers to their crazy shenanigans. You know, I had a player basically play the same exact character that was a clone of one, and I took that and I ran with it and made him a Manchun clone. So we're dealing with that right now. Like, that was a player decision that I took and ran with. Other players have made other decisions to, like, you know, go against their gods. I made my wife cry because she sacrificed her prayer book to Illustrate this weekend. And when she did that, I had Illustrate show up and talk to her and perform a song for her and ask her why she why she's sacrificing little bits of herself and what she truly is to save her friends. Why is she not focusing on her? You know, and my wife cried for a little bit and wants to reevaluate where she's taking the character. Like, you may know what the ending of the story is, but you don't know what happens along the way. The players have to do that. So I find it fun to see what they come up with as a solution to the scenarios I put them in. I don't necessarily have an answer. You know, they can kind of just come up with an answer and tell me, and I'll be surprised and go with it.
So I actually saw that post last week, and I actually did respond in that post, but that's like 230th person or something. There's a huge fucking amount of responses on there.
Yeah, you're just shouting into the void there, buddy.
Oh, I know. I'm quite aware. I DM specifically because I always have stories running in my head. I have ideas they're always there. It's constant. It never goes away. And being a game master allows me to put that to paper and then actually bring it out with my players. I don't write books. I don't create movies. I don't really write stories for people to read. So this is how I get that out. It's a creativity thing for me. It's one of the reasons I don't run other people's stuff, because I have more than enough of my own that I want to get out there.
Maybe think about it too, like storytelling well before the internet and world travel was a thing. There's always that one person that sat around in the communal spaces and just kind of like told stories to people, and that was pretty much his job, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, keep people entertained, keep the darkness away for a little bit, keep them running, trying to, you know, give them promises of a better life or an afterlife. Probably where most religions came from and most legends, you know. So like I can understand that, and we don't really have that as a field of profession. I mean, some people get lucky and get to create stuff or write stuff or direct stuff and, you know, get to pursue that opportunities, but it's not a very common thing anymore.
Yeah, like you could make a bit of a living doing something like that, but it is not common. Like speakers, you know, people who speak, people like Henry Rollins would be a good example, or even Kevin Smith these days. Although you know, they've become hugely famous, obviously, but you know they just go around and tell stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's similar to me. This is a way to tell stories, and I don't have predetermined ends. Even like I ran Salt Marsh, but I didn't really run as written. I used it as the basis for my own stuff, but I didn't have a predetermined outcome. I had ideas of what might happen, but players, as they are wont to do, constantly surprised me and came up with different solutions and different ideas. So there's always, I don't feel like I know the story because I don't. My players are going to tell pieces of the story, and I will tell a piece, and they'll respond, and it's more of a back and forth kind of thing. It's more telling a story together, where different people take the leads that other people have provided and go the direction, and then people respond and keep going.
Yeah. And like even Dan, with your thing where your Orca story, that's just a cool setting. Like I wouldn't mind running that story and just like seeing how people play through it, even though you know what the ending is and it's pretty well, you know, set to stone. Like
Oh,
what the players
they're
do.
gonna do something weird. I know they are. I mean,
Right, exactly. They're going to do something,
there's no way they're not.
especially knowing your group.
You're
We
only
could do something.
point only even, I don't know, really a session and a half through the intro that I wrote for it. We haven't even actually gotten to the actual story of the Redonkulous module that I converted.
Yeah, and so like, I don't like the fact that he thinks that the DM just knows the end of the story. Do I know the end of Uni and the Last Unicorn? Yeah, I do. Having run it twice, one player ran him right up to the wizard, hit him with the magic club, knocked him prone, stole the horn, and ran away. The one that I ran today, they befriended the blink dog instead of hitting it and making it run away. And then they trained the blink dog and had it fetch the unicorn horn when Kellic dropped it. So like, players do different things every time, and it's fun to see what they come up with as a solution.
On the other hand, some people do run very railroad kind of theme park style stories where there is a predetermined outcome, and the players may get options in combat or certain parts of the exploration, but the story's gonna happen, and the DM's gonna make sure of that.
Yeah, I mean,
I've been in a number of those, and they're not my preference. I'm okay with a bit of a railroad, but
the last big campaign I ran was a follow up to a previous one, and I knew the beginning. I did know the ending, but players still have input all along the way, and they have a lot of input at that ending. So the ending to that has now led me to start creating a third campaign, that'll sort of pick up after that one. And that campaign is going to be based off of the things the players did throughout the course of the previous one. So it's a constant. My next campaign is just going to be changed because of what my players did along the way.
That sounds a little too complicated for me. I just want them. Be done with the story already, damn it.
Well, you're effectively doing something similar with your Waterdeep game.
I
so,
know, I
yeah.
am. And then I still have to be like, okay, well, yeah, I got the Manchun thing, I got this giant star in the sky thing, and we don't actually have to address the drow thing unless you really want to. And yeah, it's going to go on forever.
Yep. Yeah, campaigns can literally just go on forever if you want them to. They don't ever have to end.
But like, I kind of was weirded out too how this guy was talking about DM rewards and like.
Oh yeah. I want to
if
talk about that.
If you're doing if you're doing AL, and I'm assuming you're running AL with multiple people in a store. There's multiple tables running, and you could rotate DMs in and out. Yeah, you get some really cool, nifty things that you can bring over to the next campaign. You use a certificate. It all kind of worked in 4th edition. At the same time, they're providing the modules to you. AL nowadays is basically just you run the book modules. Thank you. Have a great time. Bye.
Yep.
You technically you record the hours that you do stuff, and then you can chip in those hours to basically get magic items, special whifties, and stuff like that. For when you actually get a chance to sit down and play a character, you can have a more powerful character, which never really intrigued me.
That's because you don't want to play.
Well, even if I do, I don't want to play that. I don't want to play fucking main character. I'm not really interested in that. I need some challenge. I don't want to play a very tactical game with a guy that's just going to win the encounter.
Yeah,
that's not very fun. But like, I do have a secondary person. She's been playing AL for quite a while, and she does run her own D&D games. Sometimes she pitches in for me. She's running a low-level campaign at AL right now for when low people show up. So when she plays back in the main campaign with me, I give her an extra magic item here or there, but I don't make a big deal about it. That's her DM rewards, quote unquote. I kind of focus her a little bit more with, her character, because it's kind of hard to have a role-playing session in Adventures League. You kind of just get there and fight and leave. So
yep.
I try a little bit to, give her special moments because she is DMing a lot, but that's really the extent of the awards.
Yeah, AL is a combat simulator. It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
A long time ago, there used to be an organization called the RPGA. Dan, I would imagine you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I remember those guys.
Yeah, as you guys have, you two have probably done more convention modules than either me or Waples have. And
I haven't ever really was able to maintain a character because the only conventions I'd ever go to were Dragon Con, and by the time you go to 6 Dragon Cons and try to like maintain the same character, like everybody else is already like level 15 or something like that, and you're level 4. It's like
Yeah, I never participated in those kind of organized play kind of things for similar reasons. Like I when it was around, I didn't have an easy way to. I didn't want to play with a bunch of randos at game stores, and even at conventions and stuff. I would go to one. I could play to like a couple of games in that convention, but then it's been a year.
Yeah.
And then everybody else has played a bunch of them, and I haven't. So they've leveled up, and I've not. And
yeah. I know that I know the RPGA though, they were much more akin to just an example, like the Magic the Gathering organizing body. The fuck are they called? The DCC or something like that. DCI. Yeah, they were much more. RPGA was much more akin to the DCI. So if you ran games consistently for the RPGA, like you would get free swag. That you could get modules. They would give you T-shirts or hoodies, things like that. And
they had a little bit of that in 4th edition. So like they would ship out a module that would come with like the minis you would need and stuff like that, and those were like for the DM to keep.
Yeah.
Like this is your stuff,
right.
and that was fun.
So-
I would do it for that alone.
So not to get off topic here, but I guess the quote and the post and the question that you have is, should DMs get rewarded for DMing? And is this specifically for Adventurers League or just, hey, I'm DMing?
So like his question was focused around Adventures League. But it sounded like he's like, well, how can I reward DMs?
Show up with beer and pizza.
Yeah. Food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Food's all I
be-
need.
be a good player and show up with treats. Don't be the guy that raids the DM's fridge after he's spent the week preparing a game to run for you guys.
Yeah. Bring some chips and some 7-layer dip, and you're good, man.
Yeah. Bring the snacks. Actually, show up to play. That's all you got to do to reward a DM.
That's pretty much all you need from me. Yeah.
Yep. Same.
I mean, back when I first started gaming, my first actual, I played some basement games with my brother and some other friends from the neighborhood, but the first time I ever actually started playing in a game, I was, I think, 13, maybe 14, and there was a friend of the family he's like a freshman or sophomore at Tech, and he had a bunch of college friends that he gamed with, and they weren't playing D&D. They were playing this much more advanced system for the smart kids called Rollmaster.
Yes.
And we got invited. My brother and I got invited to go play Rollmaster. I'm like, okay, sure. So I read through the book, and I was like, oh, this is really, really in depth because I had like a skill for everything, a chart for everything. It was so much more robust than D&D. And like, whenever I got invited, I made the character, I was about to show up, and like, oh, by the way, Jim charges $10 per person for games. And I'm like, really? He charges money to play games? Like, yeah, he basically does this professionally. He runs, I think, 4 games a week, and it was like the first time I'd ever even heard of somebody professionally DMing.
This would have been back in the 90s.
It was back in the 90s, like 1993, 94. And like
Yeah.
he was like, I will not. I mean, no joke. Jim was a R.I.P. Jim Hester was one of the best DMs I ever had. He was the most descriptive of any DM I ever had, and his wife was like a professional artist. So all the miniatures were fucking perfectly painted. Back in the days when, like, unless you were going to like a Games Workshop somewhere and getting a professional Warhammer painter, your miniatures looked like dog shit because you're using paint probably bought from Michaels that's like $1 a piece, and they looked like it too. But like that was the first time I ever saw like a DM getting quote unquote rewarded for his work, because like, there was no by the book module he was running. He was just making stuff up along the way, and and I'm sure Christian's familiar with it. Jay probably more so, but Rollmaster was a complicated ass system, especially just to do off stuff. But yeah, that's I guess nowadays, like especially with online gaming, like you can actually make real money professionally DMing people.
Yeah.
There's quite a few people that seem to do so, and then other people that do so for obviously for Twitch streams and Critical Role and things like that definitely make real money off of just gaming, which is super cool. Wish I could do that.
It's much more impressive that he was doing that before the internet, whereas everybody who makes a living doing it nowadays runs it online on Roll20 or D&D Beyond or something else. So the fact that he could make a living,
I mean, I'm sure he had some sort of some side hustles, but
sure.
Like, he definitely charged us, and I was, I wasn't making much money. I was definitely getting allowances, and that was about it. And I definitely did a lot more yard work after that. I'll tell you that. Go game.
So
go ahead.
There's 2 things I want to bring up to that point. There is the website called startplaying.games, and on there you can search for GMs and find games, and basically I'll just click on a random person here. Here's Cheesy GMing, a girl named Charlie. She is where's her stats here? She's been 6 years as a TT RPG player, 3 years as a GM. She has 59 games hosted. She charges $30 per seat per session. And she has 3 games going on right now. Looks like they're all weekly. There are 3 to 4 seats are filled for each of the games, so you can join a game. That's $30 a session. $20 a session, it looks like, actually. And they're weekly, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And you can find GMs, you can host yourself up there and just, do that. She has her own podcast and everything. So I actually thought about trying that at one point in time. Like, how much is my time worth to run people online, So $30 a session for a 3-hour game, 4-hour game. That works.
I heard an interview from somebody who does DMing professionally, and I think that $30 an hour is the average rate. Like, if you are not a big name DM that people know about, like if you're not Matt Mercer or something like that, you're charging about $30 per seat per session, and that is just the average going rate on, I guess, whatever essentially DM's Craigslist that you were looking on there.
I mean, I mean, if you think of it, $30 a seat, if you get 4 seats filled consistently and it's a 4-hour game, that's $30 an hour. It's not terrible money. Obviously, you'd have to run a lot of games to make a real living at it, but still,
yeah, you would.
Hourly, that's not bad.
No. Especially if you're also, streaming the games. If the players are fine with that, then you get whatever extra Twitch revenue from that or YouTube revenue from that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you could spend the time and make a living wage if you ran enough games.
Yep.
I know there's a Twitch streamer named Captain Robert who's pretty much like one of the top non-celebrity streamers that stream DM games on Twitch, and his channel's always rolling stuff. Like he'll do his games, he'll do like 3 games a day, and then the next day will just be reruns of those games. So his channel's always having games go on, and he's pretty successful at it. It's enough that that is his main job, and he does seem to make a decent amount of money doing that. I'm not sure how, but
I mean, honestly, just with the numbers I threw out, like if you ran 5 games a week, you're making 500. That's a little more than $500 a week. That's 30 grand a year. If you do it consistently, so 30 grand a year. It depends where you live, depends on what your bills are, but people can live off that.
I cannot.
Yeah, some people can't, but some people.
Single person with no responsibilities other than just gaming and feeding their own habit, could vaguely live on that.
Yeah, once again, it depends on a lot, but yes, people can definitely live on that. Out here in the country where I live, 30 grand a year is decent money.
Yeah. And being that you can do it from anywhere, at your own schedule, your own time, it's a decent side hustle, I don't put a lot of effort into monetizing my Twitch stream. I just run ads and whatever subs I get, and I get like $100 a month out of that, which is enough to keep subscriptions running.
I mean, maybe this works for some people as a job. I think I would no longer enjoy it if this was what I required to pay my bills and feed my kids and stuff like that. They would just be like any other job.
It's a job, yes.
Yeah, I don't want that to be my job. I want it to be the thing that I enjoy doing with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, I'm kind of torn. I would love a job writing modules. I don't want a job running modules.
I got offered. I interviewed when I was getting into coding and programming at first. My dad knew people, and I got interviewed and could have gotten a job at a video game developer, but I turned it down because I was like, if my job is to program and build and test these games like that is, I am no longer going to want to ever do that for fun because it will take all the fun out of it when it's what I do professionally. And I did not want to make my hobby or something that I do for, turn my brain off, stress relief or whatever, become the thing I do for a living.
Yeah. And that's a valid point. That's why I actually didn't go into game development as well either. When I kind of saw the lifestyle that it was, the stress that it gives, and how all consuming it is, I was just like, you know what? This isn't for me. So I abandoned those dreams.
I like running games as a DM as a thing I do for fun, to tell stories with my friends. I don't want to get paid. I don't want it to be something I depend on or that I feel like I have to do in order to get by. I want it to always be a thing that I do when I have an idea or a passion or a story I want to tell or something. That's when it's fun to do.
Yeah. There's a store local here in Charleston called Hoodie Cat Game Lounge, and one of I think the store owner's boyfriend or husband actually rents out his time as a professional DM, and it's something like $250 for a session. And like I think he could sit up to 5 people. They also have a room you can rent out that's all like D&D themed.
That people pay each $250 per session.
No, if a 4-hour session is 250 up to max of 5 people.
So you can split it. Okay.
Yeah. But it's one of those stores you just kind of go in and rent by the hour to play games on board games and stuff like that.
So it's a what are those office workspaces that you can, but it's just for gaming.
Yeah.
I could see if I didn't know Dan, I could see if I wanted to run like a cool, like super cool, like important encounter for my game or something. I could see renting out a space for my friends and I to go in, like a space that has all the miniatures and terrain and all that crap that you can set up.
Yeah.
But I know Dan. There would never be a need to borrow his basement.
Yeah, my basement is filled with all that shit.
Yep.
I mean, I've even bounced it around with the LGS owner here in Charleston, like, building a store that is just for board gaming and renting out tables and whatnot. The issue just comes down to how do you pay for that amount of space? And he's really good at the numbers side of things, and he knows like the exact price point you would need to make, and it just isn't feasible on a per hour session anywhere here in Charleston to kind of have that going. You need to do other things. And
I think
my wife,
it'd be better to have like a side room in your store. Like you could set up one room that's decked out, dressed out to look like a dungeon room and has all the stuff. And you could say, hey, use it like an event space. If you want to rent out the room, it's this much for
that's
a 4-hour block.
That's what he eventually did. And that's they're still setting it up and everything, but that's what he did go through. But we actually talked about the idea of that, and it really comes down to a similar concept that I've seen done elsewhere. I can't remember where we were, but my wife took me out to some metal show to see Gojira and a bunch of other people that I couldn't understand the single thing that was going on. Like just that loud music just becomes one sound to my brain. She had a wonderful time. I had a wonderful time because she had a wonderful time. But they had a game store there, and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. But it was basically you get in there, you pay $20 to get in there and get a chair. And you can then play games for as long as you want. And they had a wide selection of board games.
Where was this?
I can't remember the city, unfortunately.
Was it Savannah?
No, it was someplace in North Carolina, I think, or maybe just still in South Carolina. But the way they made money off of that store wasn't the board game renting thing. That's why people went, though. They made their money off of the kind of like in-house small cafe that they had running. And with the cafe pseudo-inflated prices, you could just get like sandwiches and whatnot and just sit there and snack and binge on all their food and then play games as much as you want. We had a wonderful time, and I got a chance to chat with the owner a little bit about that. And they, the restaurant area carries the rest of the store.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a restaurant that's themed around games, really.
It's like Battle and Brew.
Yeah, Battle and
Brew
Brew
here in Atlanta.
Okay, yeah. I think that would be really cool, and that's kind of what Hoodie Cat tried to do. They just have like a small snack section though, but I can say that Synergy makes a shit ton of money off their snacks alone. So
Yeah,
that and Magic cards.
Battle Brew isn't making its money off of people that come in to play, Xbox or sit at the PC and play games like that. They're making their money off of selling booze and food.
Yeah, they have a liquor license, and that is what they're making their money off of. Same thing with what is it, Joystick Game Bar? You ever been there, Christian?
Yeah.
Yeah, same sort of thing. I mean, and there's actually a really pretty nice one over in Avondale Estates I went to. God, what's it called? There's they've got a bunch of like old school pinball machines and
All right.
called My Parents' Basement. But it's called My Parents' Basement, and they have it is a game store, bar, and restaurant, but they have like fully one half it is like a full on old school pinball arcade to the point where like they have pinball tournaments there every week.
And there's a comic shop in there.
And there's a comic shop in there too, and they also have like D&D miniatures and D&D books and everything like that. I'd never been there before. A friend of mine from college, who's not a gamer, met me up there because his daughter was in town and she wanted to go there. Like, this is totally my kind of space. And of course, we had dinner under like one of those big, those big old school heaters, and it said restaurant on the side of it, and somebody had slapped a big sticker that said Trent next to it. And it was a great experience, and I'm glad that these places exist. But I think those spaces that the place that Chris's wife took him, and My Parents' Basement and Battle and Brew are really the only way to actually make money by running one of these places. Like, the games are really there to draw people in, but the money is being made off of selling booze.
Yeah,
and
food and booze. I mean, that's
yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a restaurant first, and everything else is a
that's
table
fine.
setting.
I mean, that these people have figured it out. It is a devastatingly difficult and hard experience to run a game and or comic shop. They don't really make money. They just don't.
Yeah.
Nobody who's running one of those places is rich. And you're definitely not getting rich off of selling D&D books and Magic cards.
Yeah, well, Magic ones can make money, but they're not making money at that location. They are making money by selling online.
Yeah, they're opening packs, selling online. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally, absolutely.
Yep. Difficult businesses to get into.
Yeah, that's not even really very, very much viable anymore, given when WotC took away the MSRP for their products. It kind of killed the whole box opening, selling singles side of things. And as we kind of saw with the rules committee going, hey, we're going to ban all these cards now. Overnight, people lost a fortune. So
And I don't know why people were surprised by that. That's been par for the course for decades now.
Yeah. But imagine if that happened like in D&D, like, okay, well, no one can use Tachas anymore. You got to use this book now, and only that book.
If there was a competitive D&D scene, then sure that.
Yeah, I mean, if there was exactly. There's no competitive D&D scene, so most DMs would be like, whatever.
Yeah, eat shit. I'm gonna do what I want.
Yeah, don't really care.
Yeah, we can do that. We can make a D&D LARP and make it competitive worldwide.
It used to be at conventions. Speaking of competitive D&D, there used to be they would run tournament style games.
Oh yeah.
Where you would have a bunch of tables that are all competing either depending on the type of game. I've played 2 different types or maybe 3 different types, but where you're competing to either A, get the most treasure and get out of the dungeon alive, or B, get a specific item or kill a specific individual or something like that in the shortest amount of time possible.
Yeah.
Or a third one I've played is where they are actually running. So they would run in a room full of tables. They're all running in the same dungeon, starting at different ends. And eventually, you could run into the same area that other people were in, and it was a direct PvP dungeon experience where you're crawling through a dungeon. But if you met another group of adventurers, you would have to decide what to do. Do you want to fight them? Do you want to team up with them? Because at the end of the day, you're all going for one prize at the center of the dungeon, and there can only be one victor. So there's some interesting play with that. That's the competitive D&D I've seen, and that was kind of fun to play.
There's also competitive PvP D&D.
That's
I've played a number of times too.
Yeah, I've actually played in those before. We've had a few of those at game stores, but everybody just makes the characters or is handed a character more likely, and you all are in the middle of an arena. Last one standing is the fucking victor.
Yeah, we've played in several of those. I have multiple coffee mugs proclaiming our victory.
Nice.
Yes, we do.
Nice.
Those were very fun. The ones we had at DragonCon, the first couple I played in were definitely just, hey, big arena, 12 of you guys start, everyone roll initiative. And of course, before you ever actually get to the game, you register for these things online a month and a half in advance. They list out the rules that are available and DM's email and say, hey, can I use this? Which books are available? Blah blah blah. And it's usually just PHB DMG 3.5.
Yep.
And then later on, the guy that was running it swapped over to Pathfinder. We did Pathfinder, and he of course still very limited palette of things that you could do, but things that were still available that was clearly made in the rules is cursed items. So Christian and I look at the rules. We're like, okay, what kind of bullshit cursed items are there? There's a lot of stupid stuff in there, isn't there? And we stumble upon dust of sneezing and choking. In Pathfinder, so you've got we ended up going against a party of clerics. I think all three of them were clerics. They're all 9th level. They all had pimped themselves out with divine favor, righteous might, divine power, and cast spell resistance on themselves. And they all had magic items to boost up the spell resistance to even higher level. And Christian just kind of okay, yeah, I run up to them and I can throw dust of sneezing and choking on them. And they all were like, okay, well, yeah, spell resistance or whatever. And the DM's like, nope, doesn't work. Like, what do you mean it doesn't work? It's like, it says right there, it doesn't work. And we look in the rules, and it's like, find dust appears to be dust of appearance, cast in the air, 20-foot radius, make a DC 15 fortitude save, or take 3d6 con damage immediately. Those succeed. Save throw nonetheless disabled by choking. Treat as stunned for 5d4 rounds. Ooh. Stunned in fucking Pathfinder in 3.5, which is just awful. I mean, you're just fucked. You're doing literally, if you made the save. So stunned is -2 to AC, lose dexterity bonus to AC, attackers receive +4 bonus to attack rolls and perform combat maneuver checks, and they can't do anything.
You basically maced them.
Yeah,
you sprayed them with mace.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so Christian did this to some guy, and he's there with his wife and another buddy, and the other buddy lives with him, looks at him, he's like, oh yeah, you got us, we're fucked, and he starts chuckling about it. His wife is the guy's wife is trying to calm this big dude down. His face is just so beat fucking red because he thought of everything, and he just getting madder and madder, and he's arguing with the DM, and he's like, dude, it doesn't. None of the shit you're saying. You're choking. You're not poisoned. It's not a spell. You're choking on dust. It's like, what is this magic item? I was like, I don't care. It doesn't work.
It's in the rules.
It's in the rules, man. And you know that cursed items were available. You have one on your character sheet. You were going to back up devouring somebody. But the guy did that fucking nerd rage thing, the gif of the guy that is flips a magic table of all the cards. He did that shit and just fucking left. It just left, and his wife ran after him. The guy the third guy was actually very cool about it. Just shook our hands that was great, and just walks off yeah, we're fucked. And then we ended up fighting the other three guys, which I think was 3 druids that were all shape changed into alligators. And the guy who set up the arena was fantastic. He set up an entire city block with on a bay, and I think it was called Streets of Blood.
Streets of Blood.
Yeah, Streets of Blood. It was we're 4 rival gangs that are basically vying for control of the city. So he set up this beautiful game board that was like 8. There was like 2 full tables at Dragon Con like put together,
Yeah,
and
3D terrain and everything, so you could see the whole thing. It was fantastic.
so basically it came down to us and these druids. These druids were in the water. They had cast Call Lightning before they shape changed into crocodiles or like alligators or some shit, and they wouldn't surface except to cast Call Lightning, and then they'd dive back down. Of course, we're not going to go after them in the water, but all of our buffs are running out because we only have so many rounds. And the guy had also built in rules basically that said that you had to attack or attempt to attack somebody every round, or you become disqualified. So basically, because in previous sessions or previous games, this guy probably ran the PvP sessions at DragonCon for 4 or 5 years. But people would just be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna be the stealth with like the plus 20 stealth check, and I'm gonna go hide in the corner until everybody else is nearly dead, and I'm just gonna come out and just I'm gonna gack somebody." So he had learned from previous mistakes that you guys have to keep fighting. You guys don't waste everybody's time by just fucking around and hiding. But yeah, we ended up eventually. I think we had so many bullshit like rare wondrous items that that we ended up using. I don't even remember how we ended up taking the guys out, but yeah, we ended up with, I don't know, personally engraved coffee mugs that say Streets of Blood 1, Streets of Blood 2, or some of the other ones like that we ended up doing.
We abused line of sight. It was because you had to be able to see people to call them.
Yeah.
So we got to where we would just get cover behind buildings where we could pop out and see them and hit them with something and then pop back behind the building.
Mhm.
And they couldn't see us, so in order to not get disqualified, they had to surface and come out after us.
Yeah. And we also had Dust of Disappearance, which in earlier editions, thank God they fixed it in 5th edition, was you're just invisible for 2d4 rounds. It's just greater visibility, and you can't dispel it. Like it, and it's for everybody that you throw it on. So the beginning of the fighter would have it as like me and Christian as the cleric and the wizard would buff, and like the fighter would be like, "Okay, I throw the Dust of Disappearance up in the air. Whee! We're all invisible, guys. Let's go." So like, I mean, it really just involved us just
Yep.
trying to outthink the other players and have something in our bag of tricks for whatever they had. So of course, for whenever you had the super buffed dwarven clerics that had really high ACs and spell resistance and were all pimped out and could hit us twice and kill us, we're like, that's just sneezing and choking. Fuck off.
Yep. See that right there is the reason I was saying that they usually make the characters for you ahead of time because
Right, and that's probably a better idea.
Yeah.
But then it's all really just down to the rolls. At that
Yeah,
point.
no, this was really like his point was to see like how well you knew the rules and how well you could design a character and then make decisions in a combat. That
Yeah.
was the thing. It was about your ability to read through all the stuff, find the minutia, find the loopholes, and that's what really won.
And really it was with your hands tied too, because DMG Player's Handbook, that's it.
Yeah. You absolutely would have to limit it to just those books because otherwise it'd get.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
the-
the last one was ridiculous. Was when it was still 3.5,
my
and you just let it to be any published first party published book. And so we found this stupid Forgotten Realms because they're always overpowered.
Yeah,
So we found this
shadow magic.
Shadow magic, shadow
Yeah.
weave.
Yeah, so if you end up taking the Shadow Weave feat, it gave you 3 feats for free, but you had to be evil to take it. It's like it's a one shot that I'm on my own for. Who the fuck cares if I'm evil?
So I just want to point out you could be neutral.
Whatever. Yeah, but still, you end up taking it still stupidly overpowered. You take 1 feat to basically make your magic unresistible, undispellable, and make your illusion magic +4 levels over what you normally are. Just it was dumb. It's still dumb, and whoever wrote that should be sorry. Should feel sorry for themselves. It's something you should have for an NPC that's the big bad guy. Like it's just a special ability he gets, not something that a PC could learn.
I played a Shadow Sorcerer for years in 3rd edition, so yeah, it had some weaknesses though. Like you were really limited in other spells. Like you pretty much had access to illusion, enchantment, and necromancy, and
you could cast other spells, but your
At
evocation
lower
and
levels,
transmutation stuff were more limited, so you weren't as good at them. But in a PvP tournament, it's not about dealing raw damage; it's about control and stuff. So when your enchantment and illusion stuff is buffed, like you're gonna be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in that tournament I was playing like It was the equivalent of like an Eldritch Knight kind of, but it was like you took one level of fighter as a dwarf, and then you could wear full plate and still cast spells as if you're a wizard, and you ended up having the same hit points as a dwarven fighter instead of a wizard. It was some prestige class out of Races of Stone. It was 3/5.
Yep.
But I remember doing this and then taking that shadow magic feat, and it was just like, yeah. Anyway, I'm just gonna polymorph myself into a cave troll, which has 3 attacks and a pounce ability, and I'm already all buffed with like mirror image and all this other, because of course there's not there's rules like 5th edition where you have concentrate on one thing. You could just, have mirror image up, you have displacement up, you have you know whatever other ridiculous stuff you want, greater invisibility that is undispellable.
I mean, I played a druid in a one shot. We were trying to make broke ass characters. I played a fucking druid who could make 10 attacks a round.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. Yeah, and all that said, I don't miss 3.5 or Pathfinder First Edition. It was
So-
fun for what it was, but man, don't miss it.
Yeah, I agree. The older tournaments I had done when I was still in high school, and they were running these in either 1st or 2nd edition D&D,
Mhm.
were these big dungeons of like one of the ones I remember is we had an unfortunate teammate. And this was Captain Ranger abilities, but
Oh god.
you were just in a big dungeon, and your goal is to get to the center, and there's some MacGuffin artifact. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's the MacGuffin your goal is to get to, and they had the whole room was just everybody at separate tables of where they're starting at, and then the DMs, they had a person that was responsible just going around the tables and checking like what room people are in, so that you would know that if your adventuring party ran into another group. And it was fun. The first one we ran into a group that had run into a problem with a gelatinous cube, and we decided to just like munch them.
Yep.
To murder that group because they were already in trouble. We're like, there's no reason to negotiate with these people. They're after the same prize we are.
And then you take their magic items and use
You
those.
take their stuff, and you grab what you need and use their stuff, and then we moved on. We met one other group on our way into the center room, and we agreed that okay, like we'll work together because they had told us they had run away from another group they had found, and they knew where they were close, and they thought they knew the way. And they had a piece of there was a puzzle to get into the final room, and they had a piece of it, and we had 2 pieces of it because we
Right.
had taken out the other group. So we're like, all right, we'll take out everyone else at first, and then whoever's the last person standing.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I've played in a couple of those in Dragon Con back in the 90s too. The problem I had with them is that if you got a good DM, because it was kind of a race to the finish thing, you had a good DM who was very quick and kept people on the ball about what they're doing, then you could get ahead of the other players who had less experienced DMs. And like, I know it was a tournament thing, but you can't have everything be equal if you have a bunch of different DMs running the same thing.
Yep.
Like,
That's
because
true, and we
it's
benefited
just
from
yeah.
exactly what you said. We had a DM that was experienced, that knew the stuff and was getting through, was making sure everyone stayed on pace. Like he knew how to do this kind of thing,
Yeah.
and I think we benefited from that.
Yeah, and so the other tournament style, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. I know Christian is the cheese grinder. You guys ever read about this? Hear about this?
No.
So the cheese grinder was at Dragon Con. It might still be. It was at Dragon Con all the way probably through about 2020, whenever I guess pandemic kind of canceled Dragon Con. And the cheese grinder was a game where you could get in a number of different groups. There's probably 6 tables whenever they're running the full tables, maybe 3 or 4 late at night. But DMs that would work for the cheese grinder would make different encounters in rooms and little partial portions of dungeons. This is the early days of VTT. So what was the system that they used?
It was Fantasy Grounds.
It was fantasy. They used Fantasy Grounds to present the characters and the maps and everything. So all the DMs had the same maps, and the thing is that each of the rooms was timed. So basically, like if guys didn't figure out the puzzle or defeat the monsters to get out of the room within 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it was for each of the individual things. Then all the characters died, and you get flushed, and the next 6 people sit down. They always had a dozen pre-gen character versions that were already there, or you could bring your own character with a very select set of rules. It wasn't limited rules per se. It was just rules that they said that were okay. So it was a lot of stuff that was just bonkers as hell. Like, I remember Christian and I were looking at characters, and like we hear some guy say, "Oh, I had everything except for that," and I was like, "What are you playing?" It's like, "I was playing a gelatinous cube monk with a bunch of Ioun stones." I'm like, "What the fuck are you
Yeah.
playing?" So yeah, the gelatinous cube monk with a bunch of Ioun stones. He doesn't have any slots, so Ioun stones we spent all my 120,000 gold pieces on. And we're just like, we're looking at each other like, what the fuck? And he wanders off. I'm like, okay, we got to get into this. This is dumb as hell. And sometimes like the rooms were just really poorly written and damn near impossible to get out of. But the combat encounters though were always really well written from my experience. So that one of the best times we had was my wife was playing a half orc barbarian slash fighter trip fighter with is Pathfinder first edition with a scythe, and its scythes in Pathfinder and 3.5 did 4 times crit. But
Yep.
she had something that was like it was a keen, and she did something
Yeah.
else that like the crit range was like 16 to 20 or something like that. She
Oh.
always rolls really well anyway, so she's just mowing through shit, just tripping them and then just mauling them on the ground. And then my buddy Zach is playing a gunslinger because I think in one of the later Pathfinder books there was the gunslinger. So he's just hitting everybody's touch ACs and just firing off like old Western one-liners as he's doing so. And I'm playing a gnomish paladin riding a riding dog. Because I was like, oh, I have to play a mounted character. Like, what do you mean dungeons though? It's like a mounted character who's small riding a small dog.
That works.
So it's like riding a sheepdog through a dungeon, just lancing people and divine smiting them.
Well, with your lance, of course, you're getting like 4x damage every
Yeah.
time you charge, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we never won any of those tournaments because man, people just would spend their entire Dragon Con there, and it's like I only ever wanted to spend maybe 1 or 2 hours there because it was just so intense trying to get through each of the rooms. I was like, this is too much for me. I can't keep doing
yeah.
this.
And some people were playing gelatinous cubes with
And some
ion
people were
stones,
playing
so-
gelatinous cubes, and they're not
Oh,
here to
yeah.
actually defeat the room. They're just here to get through it, and fuck your characters. What?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun because it was very Gygaxia. Like puzzle
Oh.
rooms usually had like one solution, and you had to figure out that exact thing, or you just lost. Combat encounters were very lethal, even in Pathfinder as a system. Like it was a lot of fun to do. I played.
Yeah.
I think the first one we did, I did a veggie pygmy because they're a plant, and so they're immune to all the stuff. That
Oh
only
yeah, all
affects you.
sorts of shit. It's like poisons and
Yeah,
whatever.
they're immune to poison and a whole bunch of other stuff that only affects humanoids because I'm like, I'm a plant. That doesn't work on me.
Yeah,
And they don't have to breathe. They just.
Yeah. I only speak the one language. The one language was, like veggie pygmy, which nobody would ever pick except for all the 3 of us. The gunslinger, the barbarian with the
Sure, yeah.
the gnomish paladin. It's like my veggie pygmy says you're going to die now.
All right.
Veg me, pygmy.
Hell yeah, that would be an interesting one. All right. Oh my goodness, been lost track of time here. We've been telling all these stories of tournaments.
Yeah.
So one last thing that I wanted to talk about that I have been talking about lately is the ecology of things.
Oh God.
Oh yeah. This was not crazy or anything. So one of our players is playing a Kenku in the one of the games that I'm in, and every time somebody would eat eggs, he'd get real mad about it, because you're eating our, it's eggs, and fucking Kenkus lay eggs, and it got us to sort of wondering more about what the fuck do Kenkus actually eat. So I had to go digging through Dragon magazines, and sure as shit, their ecology of the Kenkus. And some of this stuff I had known, but I'd completely just forgotten about it because 5e doesn't really have in-depth information about Kenkus. They're just sort of another playable race. You get a little bit out of them in Volos, and I guess the new Mordenkainen's had a little bit on them, but it wasn't really a thing. But I'd completely forgotten how they're generally evil. They're sort of these scavengers of cities. They lurk in the shadows. They hang out. They steal from everybody. And I had known that they were cursed to not be able to fly, and apparently they couldn't talk either. They could only mimic, according to Volo's Guide to Monsters in 5th edition. But I got to looking. Apparently, when they came in Mordenkainen's Presents Monsters of the Multiverse, that is gone. They can actually talk. They speak common. And somehow I didn't know that. It was never a thing of them not being able to talk, I think, until Volos. I don't remember that ever being a thing until then.
Yeah, same.
We actually, in our 5th edition Keys from the Golden Vault game, we have an NPC cleric with us who's a Kenku, god of thievery. And the way our DM plays him is he only talks when he mimics somebody. So he'll wait for somebody else to say something and then say that exact same thing as close to the same voice, and then just kind of nod.
Yeah, but that's the Volos version of it.
I like that version. That's great.
Yeah, that's how our guy's playing the Kenku is basically he can only mimic things he's heard, so he hasn't been talking. He'll just say things that he's heard over the course of the game and whatnot. But apparently that was just never really a thing, especially in 3rd edition or 2nd edition. And as far as what they eat, they fucking eat everything. They're omnivores. But the curse, and I actually never knew where the curse came from. Apparently, there was before they were the Kenku, there was sort of a proto Kenku. They were large crow avian creatures who were constantly at war with giant eagles. Those two hated each other. And because they were evil, mankind and the giant eagle sort of teamed up and were killing them all. They were going to wipe them out. So the Kenku apparently cried out to anybody who would help them, and a demon god by the name of Pazuzu is who answered. And there's actually more in that same Dragon magazine.
He's the demon lord of the skies, of the lower aerial kingdoms. Yep.
Yeah. But that is who answered for them, and then they were able to carry on about their lives. They started, worshiping Pazuzu, but as they're Kenkus, they don't stick to their word. They all have ADHD, every fucking one of them, and they just sort of forgot about it. After a while, then he's like, "Fuck you guys, I'm going to curse you," and that's when they all lost their wings and couldn't fly anymore. So that's that.
Don't they also throw kids off the
Yes, they are pretty fucking ruthless when it comes to they tend to only associate with Kenku, and they'll hatch their eggs in private somewhere. When they're gonna have eggs, they'll go off to some private location, have the eggs. Once they hatch, they'll bring them all back to the eyrie, and it's feast or famine at that point. About maybe half of them don't even make it past the first month. It's very, very common, apparently, for them to just kill each other, knife each other, or starve to death. So yeah, Kenku are fucking awful.
Or metal.
Or metal. But apparently in 5th edition, they're just bird people who can't fly.
Flightless bird people, the best.
Is there an ostrich avian race?
So so reading through all those, it's not that they couldn't speak, it's that they couldn't create new sounds, so they could only create sounds based on what they've heard. Which means anytime that any of your party has talked, they can memorize those sounds and then they can use those sounds. And so when they talk, it is a mishmash of different voices and sounds because it's just what they're repeating from what they've heard.
Yeah, and that is the Volos version of things. Yeah, like the ecology of it is they just all speak common. They can mimic anything they've heard perfectly to sound like a person, to sound like a baby crying, to sound like a cat meowing, but they can just speak common.
I'm just envisioning all Kenku like in this conspiracy where they go out there and they just mimic everybody, and then they go home and like, oh god, glad we're done that for the day. So Samantha, how was your day? And they just talk normal. We're not in public. It's like squawk.
Yeah, maybe they only have real conversations around Kenku. Otherwise, they just act like they can't speak at all.
Yeah,
which is a pretty good way to go through life.
That was a Volo's addition, not from previous lore.
Yep. Well, apparently they wiped that out with Mordenkainen's, so it is not a thing anymore.
So they just went back to normal, basically.
Yeah.
Volo is such a reliable narrator. I wouldn't know why you wouldn't trust him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mordenkainen obviously knows better shit.
Yeah, definitely not an unrepentant liar.
Best.
All right. Well, that's all the topics I'm going to cover today. I had another. We'll save it for another time.
Next week it's the ecology of Volo.
I don't think they have an ecology of Volo, but a lot of Dragon magazines have a Volos section in them.
Yep. Eye surgeon extraordinaire.
The first time through, I didn't do that. I skipped him. I was like, nah, and now I regret it.
I actually didn't do the eye thing until I think Act 3 in my second playthrough. I just kept him as a merchant in the camp.
Yeah, I kept him around. I wasn't gonna do the fucking eye surgery. I'm not letting that guy near my eyes. Fuck off.
Speaking of Volo's guide to stuff, just looking on eBay, and there's a couple of these I remember from back in the day, but from second edition, there's Volo's Guide to the Sword Coast, Volo's Guide to Waterdeep, Volo's Guide to the North, but one that I'd never seen before, Volo's Guide to Baldur's Gate 2.
Huh.
I don't know if this is like a Nintendo Power for Baldur's Gate 2, or I mean, what am I looking at here? I've never seen this before.
You can get a lot of those as like republished off of DM's Guild. I got Volo's Guide to Waterdeep, and the book's pretty good. It's
Volo's Guide to all
no, it is a travel guide like the other ones.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Special note, this edition of Volo's Guide to Baldur's Gate 2 Shadows of Am, intended for travelers from beyond the borders of Faerun, contains notes and commentary by the famous archmage and sage Elminster. But yeah, it appears to just be another travel guide. That is it's tied with the Baldur's Gate 2 game, but yeah, I think it's just
maybe they put it out at the same time. But yeah,
probably.
looking through eBay here, yeah, we've also got Volo's Guide to Cormyr, Volo's Guide to all things magical. There's also Volo's Guide to the Dale Lands. Like, I never saw most of these.
Yeah, I knew there were a few, but I didn't know that many of them.
I didn't either. I
just something else to add to the collection.
For the most part, these all seem to be written by Ed Greenwood too. So this is him actually dropping the hot lore you actually want from the actual author.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I think at this point in time, he was probably one of those things where TSR was just going and running with his campaign setting and just ham-fisting whatever the hell they wanted into it to make it just make more money. And he's just like, yeah, I'm going to write some guidebooks from Volo.
But the beautiful thing about it is that it's because they are written by Volo, even though it's from Ed Greenwood, they could still be misinformation.
Yeah, it was still.
He makes it very clear that Volo is an unreliable narrator, and that way the material there is for you as a GM to take as you will.
Yeah, which is why he was saying with that other one that it has notes from Elminster, who is a much more reliable source.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think I'm done here.
Yeah, we've run a little bit long.
a little long, yeah. Not 2 hours, but hour and a half or so. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us again, like always.
Yeah, it's always fun to hear a different perspective of things. I'll catch you all later. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Craig.
Bye.
Bye.